For this episode, I happen to have the perfect attire. Let's get to it, shall we?
Will you stop the clatter, you bubble-headed booby?
Hit me.
The Outer Limits.
Our story begins in the office of Dr. Temple and his assistant Lori, who are intrigued by a new kind of rock. Dr. Temple puts a pair of samples in a display case for later study as Lori's husband, Paul, arrives to pick up his wife. Paul, a physician, stays in the office after Lori leaves to get her things, and Dr. Temple walks away, totally unconcerned about fire safety.
Well, have a nice lunch. Thanks, John.
When Paul tries to reactivate the oven after it stops burning, he is blown across the room, knocking his skull against the wall. Due to Paul's status as a metalhead, meaning he has a metal plate in his head, he hears the voices of the two rocks as they quickly exposition together their plan for world domination. They decide not to possess Paul due to the aforementioned plate, and as soon as they realize he can actually hear what they're saying, they talk about killing him. Before they can, however, he is found by his wife and goes to get some x-rays done to make sure he's okay. Another doctor makes fun of his metal plate, and Paul tries unsuccessfully to shrug off what he heard. Later, he breaks down and admits to hearing voices before the rocks start taunting him with Van Halen lyrics.
Jump. Jump.
Go ahead and jump.
He tries to run away and hide from the rocks, but his wife eventually convinces him he's acting like a lunatic. But rather than seeking psychiatric help or anything like that, they decide the best course of action is to go to Mexico. There, they find a quaint little cottage that we're supposed to believe is terrible. Look, I'm not saying it's the Ritz-Carlton or anything, but I would happily vacation there with my family. And those pans Lori badmouths, those look like the best cast iron pans you could ever hope to come across. Anyway, their questionable criticisms of comfort aside, they settle in for the night and emerge the next morning in states of undress that must have been shocking for network television in the 60s. Paul notices the home's caretaker falling into a burning ring of fire, but accepts his explanation that he's doing it to keep the evil at bay. Paul and Lori then decide to go to town and pick up some things like bottled water, but Paul wants to go alone. When pressed as to why, he finds the best excuse he can to not admit that the plot needs them to be separated.
Just, see how I feel about it by myself.
That way, a newly possessed Dr. Temple can crash the party and rock Lori's face off. When Paul returns, he finds that his wife has turned ugly, and so he runs away from her as fast as he can, not even stopping to explain himself to the caretaker, still hanging out in his circle of campfires. He checks into a seedy motel not far away, because that's a logical thing to do, but it doesn't take the caretaker long to track him down and explain to him that Lori is sick and needs a doctor. And hey, isn't Paul a doctor? Paul begrudgingly lets the caretaker twist his arm into caring for his wife, and they return to find her, barely conscious and burning up from fever. Paul begins treating her and tells the caretaker he can go. As soon as he does, though, the possessed Dr. Temple crashes the party yet again, explaining very helpfully that Paul isn't actually crazy, that the world will soon be overtaken by rock, and that he's about to shoot him. Then, shockingly, he shoots him. But it turns out people twisted out of their minds by rock aren't very good shots, and so Paul is able to fight back, ultimately killing Dr. Temple and witnessing the creature emerge in all its rubbery glory. Just then, Lori awakens, grabs the gun, and tries shooting Paul. However, again, rock people have terrible aim. So Paul lunges for her and in the struggle winds up shooting her. In the ensuing mental battle with the rock monsters, he starts his own Great White Concert and evacuates with the body of his wife, who may or may not be dead, while the caretaker watches on. I'm a bit mixed on this episode. I like the concept of a man hearing alien voices and dealing with whether or not he's insane, and I think Robert Culp pulls off a pretty brave performance of a guy who's been so disturbed that he reverts to a childlike paranoia. However, the story gives the game away right at the start and doesn't allow the psychological horror to really blossom the way it should. Instead, it shows off some remarkably terrible creature effects and dollar store Halloween makeup. Also, again, I have to point out that the episode fails to take advantage of the hour-long runtime, with most of the episode dragging its feet. Still, I didn't hate it. And that's all I have on Corpus Earthling. Now, as always, do all those YouTube-y things and check out my Patreon. And all that good stuff. But until next time, this is the Unapologetic Geek, telling you to never be ashamed of what you love. As long as you're not hurting anybody.